So let's talk about free agent quarterbacks. We're going to talk about the quarterbacks and where we want them to go. I asked you guys yesterday. We spent probably enough time on it. We can do it again briefly if you want. You said you'd like Lamar Jackson just stay in Baltimore, right?
I think for his fantasy value, you know what you're getting. So based on the teams that he'd be looking at or looking at him per se, the one that I said this the other day was the Raiders, just if he ends up there with that weaponry on the surface, I think that'd be fun.
How about Atlanta? That coach loves movable quarterbacks. There are some good pieces there. If he can connect with Kyle Pitts the way he connected with Mark Andrews, I think we'd have a real good time.
Didn't they already say they're not interested? Wasn't that one of the teams?
They were one of the teams, yes.
Reportedly. Things can change, I guess. Aaron Rodgers. Now, I know he's not a free agent, but obviously could be on the move. Where do you want to see Aaron Rodgers go?
I mean, I think at this point it's a foregone conclusion. It's going to be the Jets or the Packers probably. I don't mind him going to the Jets, see what he can do with Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, and Breece Hall, and see if he can rekindle his relationship and make Nathaniel Hackett look like a better play caller again.
I think he'd be comfortable there. And I think he'd fall in love with the receivers that they have there, the O-line that they have there. And once the running back gets back up to speed, I think he'd be very good there. Maybe even top 12 good there. But if he somehow ended up with the Raiders, would that be so bad?
Nope.
I think that he might actually be better than top 12 if he went to Las Vegas. And throwing back with Devontae Adams, those two had a connection. The other targets that are in Las Vegas, Josh McDaniels is the play caller. I think that would be a pretty dang good fit. And the fact that the Raiders' defense is such a mess means a lot of high-scoring games. I think I'd like Raiders over Jets, but I think Jets is looking pretty good.
So, yeah, I guess what would concern me about the Jets would just be, what if they have the best defense in football and Breece Hall, and they're just really conservative? But I wonder, look at last year, right? If that was the only year of Aaron Rodgers' career, we didn't know anything about Aaron Rodgers other than what he did in 2022, you would think he's not a very good quarterback. He didn't really do much. I mean, he stunk against the Vikings. He didn't score a lot of points against the Lions in 2 games. I mean, he just had a bad year. He wasn't even a top 20 fantasy quarterback. And statistically, everything was down. Everything was bad for him. But on a scale of 0 to 10, how much does that matter for you as you evaluate him? He had 2 straight MVP seasons and then a bad one. How much does 2022 matter to you as you evaluate Aaron Rodgers and try to, measure your expectations for him? 0 to 10.
3.
How much does last year matter?
Yeah. How much you holding it against him, I guess.
8.
Oh, discuss, guys. Jamie, you're on a different end of the spectrum there.
I mean, he's 39 years old. These guys aren't, there's a reason there's one Tom Brady. It's not like this happens all the time, so I think he'll still be a good quarterback but as a fantasy quarterback, I'm very concerned. Even if he does end up with a good receiving core, he doesn't run anymore. And so, while he doesn't turn the ball over a lot, if he ends up in a situation where, Dave gave 2 pretty good scenarios, if Breece Hall's right and it's, still that caliber of player, I think that's still going to be a team that's going to lean on the run. If he goes to the Raiders, while he will be reunited with Devontae Adams, he also has the NFL's leading rusher behind him too. So I don't think he's got the same upside that he has been when he was 36 coming off a bad season. He's older. I don't want to question somebody's motivation, but I mean, it feels as if his motivation for football has certainly changed the last couple of years.
Do you think he'll be a league average quarterback?
No, he's better than that. I mean, well, again, fantasy and reality. Reality, he's not a league average quarterback. He's an above average quarterback. He still, has the ability to make all those plays. But I don't know if his fantasy production is going to be the same. I don't know if they're going to throw in the red zone like they did 2 seasons ago. The Packers did, and allowed him to rack up all those touchdowns. I don't think he's a 4,500-yard guy again, unless, he gets in a situation where, like Brady was the dream situation. He went to Bruce Arians and it was just, all systems go. I just don't know if a team wants him to do that. Why would you?
Okay. Jimmy Garoppolo. So look, we're not going to be excited about Jimmy Garoppolo most likely. Maybe
especially if he goes to Houston.
Yeah, if he goes to the Raiders, I don't know if he'd be like a number 20-ish quarterback, but Jimmy Garoppolo, let me tell you where he ranked in his last 4 seasons. One of them was a partial season, 5 or 6 games. In yards after the catch per completion, he ranked first, and first. Every year, he was number 1 in yak per completion. So that's why people think he's just a system quarterback. That's one of the reasons, because he looks good on paper. Does Jimmy Garoppolo make you excited, unexcited, neutral about, say, the number 1 receiver on the team he ends up with?
Depends on the receiver.
Well, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, let's say that. Does it make you? Are you?
I think it's a notch down for those guys, even Devontae, if it's Garoppolo, because Garoppolo he's good at like short area passing. Sure, we can say that, and he's been in a system where receivers have been put in position to make plays after the catch. Theoretically, that's what would happen if he went to Houston. Their new offensive coordinator did come from the Kyle Shanahan tree, but they don't necessarily have the receivers to do that on the roster as of now. Las Vegas would be a little bit different. I think that receivers could be put in a position to do that, of course, but I just feel like Garoppolo isn't like quite on that same level as other quarterbacks around the league as far as elevating their wide receivers. Tack on the fact that he does have a hard time staying healthy. We can't count on him to play a full season. That means that the backup is going to come in at some point. Who's that backup? What are they going to do to the receivers that are on that team? It's not going to be pretty. So I can't feel excited about Jimmy Garoppolo throwing to anybody.
I agree with that mostly. The one thing that I can't get past, though, is how great Garrett Wilson was with everybody not named Zach Wilson. So it just feels like anybody there that has some experience, some level of competency, will just help that player, or more likely that player will help that quarterback be still productive as a tandem. So I just feel like anything that Garrett Wilson gets should be better than what we saw for the portion of the season when the guy who was supposed to be their franchise quarterback was under center.
All right, let's wrap up quarterback here. First, let me ask you this. If Jimmy Garoppolo goes to the Carolina Panthers, you would rank DJ Moore where at wide receiver?
Somewhere between 16 and 20.
Somewhere between 25 and 30.
Oh, okay. Would you take Cortland Sutton or DJ Moore if Garoppolo is on?
More.
Jerry Jeudy or more?
Judy.
Okay. Calvin Ridley or more if Garoppolo is on?
Ridley.
And Kirk.
Christian Kirk.
More.
Okay. Any other quarterbacks you want to talk about? I put Tom Brady on the list. Mariota, Mayfield, Darnold, Wentz, Brissett, Bridgewater, Jameis Winston, perhaps, Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
But anything else here?
Those are all guys that will settle for jobs when every other domino falls in, probably after the draft.
But I bet one of those guys ends up starting week 1. Like there are too many openings. One of these teams is going to botch it.
Sure, Carolina could certainly bring in a bridge quarterback. Tampa Bay's got a big opening, clearly, and depending on what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. One of those quarterbacks could end up being the starter to begin the season for whichever team Anthony Richardson gets drafted to or Will Levis gets drafted to, because those guys don't feel ready for the league yet. But Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, those guys are ready. They'll start week 1. So that hurts the case for those veteran quarterbacks.
I mean, Jameis Winston, I would love to see him from a fantasy standpoint. I would love to see him ahead
in Tampa.
Let's say I had a wide receiver in Dynasty and my choices were Winston or Garoppolo. In fact, I don't know. I would rather have Winston from that, not as an NFL team. I don't know, but just in terms of pass volume, a guy who can produce for wide receivers, he's done it year after year. He's kind of like Ryan Fitzpatrick. He may not be a great player, but I'd rather have him as a fantasy quarterback than most of the guys on this list.
I would rather have him in fantasy and reality than Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't feel like Jimmy Garoppolo, outside of the system that he's going to play in, is going to be much fun to watch. I think Jameis is going to be fun.